Going on with only God can judge me. So we're going to kind of run through
Only
this,
God can judge me, huh?
our
Okay.
introduction. So remember, the basic part of our introduction was uh, an example of something happening at a church. And the woman is saying, who's to say that they were doing wrong? Who are we to say that? And she goes on to say, we can't be the judge, jury, and executioner. That's God's job, since only he knows the heart. So we have to, we've heard that. Some questions that we have here: our definition, our historical perspective. We've gone through verses 1 through 2, chapter 7, judge not that ye be not judged. All right. So we've really been hitting this judgment thing. Also looking at verses 3 and 5 through 5, talking about the beam and the mote, or as they said, the beam or the speck and the plank. So talking about the speck in your brother's eye, but you have the plank in your own eye. So looking at those, then we went on to verse 6, telling us not to give what we have,
which is holy
all
unto the
right? So giving it unto
oh,
the swine, telling us not to do that. And it gave us the instruction for prayer that we should ask, seek, and knock, and we will find. So verse 9 and 11 actually shows us God's nature, which we should know should be our attitude. And basically, God gives gifts, or the Father gives gifts. When we give evil or gifts, we know what the Father gives. So he gives us, or what we as earthly mothers and fathers give, and God gives us more than that. And we are here, verse 12, which is all in all where we're going to start, and which is basically the golden rule. And we've been learning the golden rule since we were knee high to a duck, as they used to say, right? Or say, well, as I say, as Rover was a pup. We've been learning the golden rule, knowing the golden rule. At least we should know the golden rule. So Matthew 7:12 says, therefore, all things whatsoever ye do, you would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. So we're talking about the golden rule, and just a little bit about the golden rule. The golden rule is supposed to be, as they say, it's supposed to be a moral principle. We could also use it as an ethical theory. It could be used, and they're using it as a decision-making model in this time frame. And we also see it, I think Pastor said it's the rule of reciprocity. They're saying the rule of reciprocity. I'm going to just read you a couple of different versions of this by Confucius, Aristotle, and who else was it? Buddhism. So Confucius says it like this: what you do not want done to yourself, do not do to others. Aristotle says it this way: we should behave to others as we wish them to behave to us. And then Buddhism says, hurt not others with that which means pains yourself. So just different ways that the golden rule is actually stated, and how others see the golden rule. And looking at this, as Pastor has said it before, in this whole chapter this portion of the chapter that we're talking about is actually during Christ's Sermon on the Mount, is what this is. And this has been described, some would say, as the second great commandment, the golden rule. I have something that I had, okay, I'll do that later. So as I'll do what I was going to say a little bit later as the golden rule, or some things, as they say, with the golden rule being more of an ethical type of thing. So I'll do that later. So something else I have, it says the golden rule is supposed to be the empathetic essence of morality. It comprises all the rules of the law with regard to man and all the amplification of those precepts given by the prophets. The golden rule was a vital emphasis on empathy and the reciprocity of morality. So the golden rule is, as again, going back, ethical principle. That's what they're saying. The golden rule is an ethical principle. And as an additional thing with theology, it says that the golden rule addresses human interpersonal relationships theologically. So it's the very character of God guides how we should interact and relate to one another. All right.
Jesus is almost culminating how our attitude, oh, good evening, everyone, how our attitude and all of that is to be expressed among each other. But the interesting part of many outside entities labeling this as the golden rule is it comes from every sect, every religion, every sect. And so rather than them calling it a biblical principle, they reduced it to calling it a golden rule. And they're claiming it as a moral law. It was also adopted and accepted in many courts over the years. Many courts, they would rule or sometimes sentence by or based on the golden rule. But the golden rule, literally, the golden rule of the world, that the world refers to, literally comes from the Bible, and it comes from this verse. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do you even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. Jesus is again culminating the attitude that we have with each other. He's summing it up, if you will. He's summarizing that this is where we should come to in our process of thought, in our train of thought. This is where and what we should come to. Jesus is putting a positive spin on it. Typically, when they speak of the golden rule, they're speaking of ethics, or they're speaking of processes. Jesus is speaking of the positivity of it. He's saying that it's a connection with reaping what's sowed. He's saying that if you treat others the way you want to be treated, then this will be easier for us to follow what the prophets and what the law says. It would be a lot easier to live by that if we had the idea and the mindset of just treating people right, or treating someone the way we would want to. Now, before we read the boxes, every entity, probably every job, especially in public service or in other areas, almost everyone has a rendition of this. Almost everyone. I know at the post office, we are letter carriers. We deliver and we take mail to people, and I think is a very important role in this society. And we try to do it based on the golden rule. We try to do it. We try to have the mindset of, I'm going to handle what's personal to you, which is your mail, like I would want my own handled. So I'm not going to leave it anywhere. I don't stick it out of boxes. I don't do things that would be a careless use or a careless handling of something that might be very important and very precious to someone else. And a great part of it is I'm thinking, I wouldn't want that done to me. So we try to deliver based on how we would want it delivered. Now, we see in these days that is not happening in any industry. That is not happening in any entity. At the moment, I'm not sure if people really care how they're doing whatever it is that they're doing. Rather they might be affected by it or not. This verse is simple, but yet complicated. What it says is very simple. Just do to others what you would want them to do to you. And he says, this is all that the prophets were telling us about the law. This is all that the prophets were telling us. Measuring everything we do against it excuse me, being done to us does not seem practical. It really doesn't. I mean, no one is of the mindset all the time that I'm going to do it this way because if somebody else was doing this to me, this is how I would want them to do it. I do not believe that that's practical. I don't think that that's always our mindset. I don't think that's our frame of thought all the time, which is why Jesus is saying here, he's taking a special effort to say, this is what we should do.
Mhm.
This is how we should practice living. This is how we should see and treat each other and everyone else. And sometimes when we're teaching the word, especially if we're teaching it to believers, sometimes we have to be careful that we don't make it sound that it's just for believers. This is not. This is for how we treat everyone, not just believers. Of course, we're going to treat our brethren well, at least most of the time. Most people feel that way. Today, it seems like family love and brother love and brotherhood and all is up in the air. It's up for grabs. But most of us treat our loved ones well. Jesus is talking about how we treat everyone, how we view everyone, and not just our brethren. He's saying that if we make a practice of doing to people what we would want them to do to us, we can set a standard, not only for ourselves, but we can also uphold a standard that God has given through his law, through his word, through his prophets. I put a however in there. However, this should be a part of our normal way of thinking or processing. It should be. Now, I know it doesn't seem practical, but it should be. It should be that we are trying to see everyone through the lens of God's eyes. And so if we practice doing that, if I see everyone as a child of God, whether they ascribe to God or not, or whether they believe, or whether they of the faith or not, if I see them as a child of God, then I will be more apt to treat them in the way that God said. I'll be more apt to treat them that way. And if that becomes my norm, if that becomes my way of thinking, if that becomes my way of processing, then I will slowly and unconsciously do to them what I would want them to do to me. That would become unconscious. It is not always the case. It is not always the case. The law and the prophets says how we should treat others. It's what the law and the prophets said. If we carefully read the law, God gave the law to the Hebrew children, to the Israelites, to the ones who left Egypt. He gave the law first and foremost so that they know what he required of them for him. He had certain requirements in the beginning of the commandments, and we all know what those are. Don't have no other God, and all those kinds of things. And he let them know that he wanted to be treated a certain way. But the last half of the first of the 10 commandments, before he gave all the Levitical laws and all the Deuteronomical laws, the second half of the 10 commandments was how we were to treat each other. And God was specific and what we should do with one another. Now, he was talking to them in the wilderness because they really weren't around anyone else at that time. And so they really needed to know how to get along with one another if they were going to be a people and he was going to be their God. There had to be some kind of governmental structure. There had to be some kind of disciplinary structure. There had to be something. If not, then people will just be directionless and people will just be lawless. And we're kind of seeing some of that now. And so God was sharing that that's what the prophets all said, throughout the Old Testament. This is what they continually said. They were lifting up and promoting and teaching God's law. And albeit some of them, that being men and women, some of them failed, but they had a law that did not fail. Now, Paul made it clear in the New Testament, in the new dispensation, in the dispensation of grace, that the law could not save. And the law was never intended for salvation. The law was intended for cultivation. The law was intended for being together with each other, for community and everything else. That was the law. So the law was never dispelled, although we've come to the New Testament. There's been an argument that in the New Testament, we are no longer under the law, but we're under, they consider the law to be a schoolmaster. And we are not bound by the law to salvation, but the law helps us to live with each other. And I don't understand the Christians or those theologians that say we're not bound by the law when we all have laws that we must live by daily in order to function in any society, unless it's a lawless place. We all have laws. So if we're going to say that we do all to the glory of God and that we follow the laws of the land and that we are subject to those that have rule over us, why would we say that we should adhere and be obedient to those and throw out the law of God? It wouldn't make any sense. The law of God still helps us to function with each other. It still gives us a frame of thinking and a frame of processing. And this rule encapsulates a lot of it. That's why some say this was a culmination, or some say this was an additional commandment, because it was really shaping our thinking. And in all of the law, in its totality, really only tells us how to live with each other. Now, these laws that God gave before the New Testament, these were laws that were how to live and to be governed on earth. Heaven has a what's called a law of God. Heaven is not a democracy. It's not an autocracy, but it will be only God's law. And there will be no sin, there will be no heartache, there will be no issues. Much of the law that's needed now in order to be able to get along with each other won't be needed in heaven, because the challenges and the opposition won't exist. And we won't have to worry about it. If we simply treat others the way we would want to be treated, we would naturally obey all the laws about our relationship with others. We would. It would be unconscious. One would lead directly into the other. If I treat you right, whether you treat me right or not, I have adhered to how I want to be treated. So when I treat you right and the way that you should be treated, if you do not treat me right, depending on your egregious, depending on what you do, you could find yourself in trouble. But I would not be in trouble, and I would not have set an example for you to treat me wrong. I would not have set an example for you to mistreat me. I would not have set an example for you to take advantage of me. All of these things go hand in hand. It's a process of thought. It's a way of thinking. It should become a norm. And when it does, and we have to deal with mistreatment, we won't have an issue. We could go to God's word, or we could tail or piggyback onto the laws as they are stated today. And that person who is causing the mistreatment will have to answer to the issues that they're causing, because that's what happens in court when there is no reason whatsoever for you to do what you have to do. I'll give you our last very popular case, Kyle Rittenhouse. I personally thought that Kyle Rittenhouse should have gotten some punishment. And I didn't think that it should have been just time that he'd already served. I thought he should have gotten some punishment because of what he did, But they determined, after looking at all of the evidence and after listening through all of the trial, they determined that he was acting in self-defense. That was the outcome of the trial, and nothing disciplinary happened to Kyle Rittenhouse, because they determined that he'd acted in self-defense. Well, acting in self-defense means that he did something to defend himself because someone else provoked him. Well, if we incorporate and apply this golden rule and live this way and make this a norm and make this a normal way of thinking and a way of processing, the chances of us provoking others to mistreat us will be very low. very, very low.
But isn't this common sense?
In some cases, it is. In other cases, it's, the proverb says that harsh words turn away, harsh words stir up wrath,
Mhm.
and soft words turn away
Okay.
wrath, or harsh words stir up anger, and soft words turn away wrath. Depending on how I treat you, might be the way that I'm treated by you.
Go. Okay. Go ahead, Si.
It's just a little bit of funny just on the end.
Mhm.
Steve Harvey I think it was Steve Harvey, was talking about how his daughter was going to go for the what you call that thing? Prom. They were gonna go to prom, and the boy came to pick her up, and Steve Harvey said, "I'm her daddy, and I just want you to know that whatever you do to her, I'm gonna do to you."
Right.
So this goes with the treat others the way you want to be treated. And Steve Harvey, I believe it was Steve Harvey, it was either Steve or Denzel, one of them said, they didn't have to worry about her coming in late. They didn't have to do anything. By 10 o'clock, the child was home.
Right.
So, I mean, it's just a funny on the end of treating others the way we want to be treated. That young man was like, okay, I don't want to be treated X, Y, and Z by Mr. Harvey, so I guess I better do the right thing.
But looking at that, I thought about when Pastor was talking about it, I had different things or instances coming to mind because, we say empathy and thinking about empathy and that always saying, put yourself, another way to say to go to when people say is put yourself in someone else's shoes or walk a mile in somebody else's shoes. I thought about that commercial that Shaq has out right now where he's walking head next to that girl and he's in her shoes and she's in his shoes and he done tore up her shoes.
Yes.
But he said, no, I can't do this no more. I can't. Right. So thinking that was just the thought, to do that. And then also thinking about, I know we had said this once before and had made this comment once before about remember the bracelets, WWJD.
Yeah.
What would Jesus do?
Yes.
Looking at those and my last instance was looking at our millennials or Gen Zers.
Yeah.
And now with their issues of respect and saying, I ain't respecting her, she ain't respecting me. Or she ain't, I mean, is there an age
Good question.
difference associated with respect? Or, I guess I'm saying because I'm an elder, is it automatic that I should be respected or what? That's open for anybody. Just, because that's a big thing that's out there and that's being said, well, she didn't respect me or he didn't respect me. If you want me to respect you, you got to respect me,
Before you get to that question, before you get to that question,
Well, y'all
that's a deep one. Yes, Lordy. The other one that, you know how you talked about empathy, sympathy, putting yourself in other people's shoes. I love that Caucasian teacher when she makes the classroom cry because it's full of all these Caucasian students and she makes sure to pick them out. And she treats them the way that Black students would normally be treated. And she said, if you would like to have X, Y, and Z happen to you, stand up. And nobody stands up. And then she gives them so many different examples. And she said, you've just lived what's called white privilege and you're benefiting off of white privilege.
Okay.
So she really puts them in different situations. Like somebody might be a minute late to class and she'll be like, oh, go out. You can't come back in and you failed for the day. And so she'll make them feel what really happens to us. And she says, this is the kind of things that happen. Do we really want people treated this way? And she said, out of all the time she's done this class, no one has ever said they wanted to trade places with somebody else. And so that, within itself is a big eye-opening lesson. And that's the big, really debate about critical race theory too, because that lady she don't play. So I just wanted to bring it up before we went into the respect question. Because y'all know how I feel about that. I'm gonna
Well,
let somebody else speak.
so I mean, it's open to anybody to answer or what your thought is. I'm sure everybody has been hit with that or has heard that or
ask them this way. I got it. Everybody, almost everybody on the line has a child.
Oh, I've never.
Your child at the age of 12, you telling them to do something. Let's just say go get your glass of water because you tired from working all day. And they like, you ain't bring me no glass of water. So you supposed to bring them. So I'm just saying, let's just imagine. So when we're talking about respect, when we're talking about respecting your elder, and is there an age limit when they can tell you that? Let's think if they start off that young. You go mow the lawn, this is your job to mow the lawn. And they turn around and tell you, you got to mow the lawn, but you work all day, all week long.
That's my question. Is there an age limit for respect? Or to respect? Or to, because basically when we talk about that, it is a issue of respecting somebody else. Or, you know, because you don't want that done to you, isn't it? So, you know, I mean, we don't really say the golden rule like when we were growing up. So it's not really the golden rule. We're not saying it that way anymore. We're not really saying it that way anymore. You know, and of course, when I said isn't that common sense, you know, finding out common sense is a common.
Right.
Okay, I'm going on the extreme so some people can talk. I am.
Wait, Sister Downey,
Oh,
got her hand up.
Okay.
Well, what I was going to say is train up a child the way it should go. You know, as far as young people, you know, they have to be taught that, you know, that's disrespectful. And, you know, you want to, you know, teach them the precepts of God's law. They should learn that early on. And hopefully that will stick with them. So train up a child the way it should go.
Amen.
So we saying somewhere along the way we
stopped training.
We stopped training.
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We stopped training.
We've stopped training.
Yes.
At some point. Okay.
Yes.
I was just asking. Is that a question? Aside, if you want to go, it's just a question. Is there an age limit to respect?
She pretty much hit it on the nail, because I would have said the same thing. Starting on day one from the stomach on, you teach them the respect, and then even when they get older, they still respect. Because you never know what is happening in the other seniors' life. You still say hi, even if you don't know those seniors or whatever, because they've paved. Not only is it biblical, like Sister Downey just said, but they've also paved the way for you. So and I don't care what color you are now, for you to openly disrespect and call them old-fashioned or not talk or not treat them in a certain way, not even send them a greeting card, that is a lack of respect. You wouldn't want it. Think about it this way. Eventually you're going to get old. And as you get, eventually you're going to get old. You're going to be that 30 person or that 40-year-old person that they're going to call old and old-fashioned, because your ways are going to be completely different from what they are. And at some point, we've, as a people, have let too many things creep in to the homes, creep into that. And as a matter of fact, we were talking about the Bible study, not Bible study, Lord have mercy, Sunday school. And I think Mom and I were talking about, you know, the children that could read, write, and they didn't really get in trouble in school, they went to Sunday school. And they learned how to read the Bible, even from a young child on. They learned how to read the Bible. They learned all of what happened. And then I had her laughing. I went on my little preaching spell. I said, and then they definitely said they weren't going to be bad because they didn't want to get hung on the cross.
Right. Because they scared us with fire and brimstone.
And they scared, right? And they scared us with, so, with all of that, it's like, it does teach us how to respect. And we are supposed to hold a level of respect. Now, I'm not saying you really want the person who's doing a lot of things that are harmful. I'm not saying that you have to stay and live with them, but you do just respect them. You respect them.
Man.
I have, since we talked about, and we said that this was an ethical and a moral issue or thing, I have here is 8 ethical tests. So these are 8 questions that can help us make what they're calling a good ethical decision.
In any situation.
In any situation. Okay. So the first one is the golden rule test. Would I want people to do this to me? The second one is the truth test. Does this action represent the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
That's the core part.
Right. 3, the what if everybody did this test? Would I want everyone to do this, mean lie, cheat, steal, litter the school, etc.? Would I want to live in that kind of world? 4, the parents test. How would my parents feel if they found out I did this? What advice would they give me if I asked them if I should do it? Number 5, the religion test. If I have religious beliefs, how do they apply to this action? What would a respected member of my religion advise? Are there any religious texts that I could draw on for guidance? 6, the conscience test. Does this go against my conscience? Will I feel guilty afterwards? And 7, the consequences test. Might this action have had bad consequences, such as damage to relationships or loss of self-respect now or in the future? Might I come to regret doing this? And then 8, the front page test. Here we go. How would I feel if my action was reported on the front page of my hometown paper? And this was by Dr. Tom Lickenow in Character Matters. So these are some good questions to think about when you're talking about do unto others, as you would have them. So it's a good.
Before you go.
Okay.
I have an expanded question. I think that you all have answered it already, but just for food for thought. If we are not treated well, do we have a right to go at that person? This verse says, therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men do to you, do you even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. But what if we do right and they don't? What should be our reaction?
I'm going to be honest with this because I believe, and I'm working on this, on getting revenge. I know that's God's job. Sometimes I'll be wanting to help him out. I would say, sometimes you got to show them what they're doing so they can see they're doing wrong, and then you let them know. But I would get back at them myself.
You said she said I have to be honest about this.
Well, don't do that. Don't do that.
She said she didn't work on it.
I've heard people say over the years, don't make me put my religion down. Don't make me put my religion down, or don't make me go there. Don't drag me down into all kinds of various things. Or I wasn't born, or I think somebody would say, look, I was born in the projects. If you don't want to bring that out, and so many things. I believe that a change of mindset, a change of thinking and processing, we're going to follow God's rule, because that's what this is. I know they've turned it into golden rules and all kinds of other names to explain it, but it's really God's rule. And it's what God is saying. We're to do our best to maintain and to continue, albeit though, Sister Turner, I'm with you. God is definitely working on us, and it would not be a good idea for people to test that and to find out that that might still be something in us that could rise up.
But we're
That could rise
human.
up. Well, exactly. And there's still an old nature.
Right.
And I heard, well, I don't know his name. Not sure what his name is, but he's a great preacher, comes on the Word Network. And I heard him talking about this verse. And and he said, you know, you have to be careful with people. And you have to be careful. He said, even with Christian people, he said, people that are good and people that want to follow God, he said, they have an old nature. He said, and it might just be a booger bear still there. He said, and so for the folk to just think that they can take advantage of a Christian and take advantage of a good person that might not even be subscribing to Christianity, but just take advantage of a good person. And he said, and they find out that there's a bear that lives in there. And so he said it would behoove everyone to live by this principle. He said, many people have gotten their tails beat. This is his words, not mine. He said, many people have gotten their tails beat because they didn't apply the rule that God said to live by. And he said, and they received judgment right away. It didn't go through the process. So they received judgment right away. So it really would behoove us. I know that's comical, but it really would behoove us to try our best that we can to live by this principle and to remember that the law tells us how to live with each other. But if we move to the other way, then let us apply the laws of the land. Let us apply the laws of the land so that whomever is involved in mistreatment will pay a price for the mistreatment that they were involved in. Because we do have laws of the land that we should utilize. Again, especially when we're doing the best that we can. Because if not, as Sister Turner said, and as Dr. Marbley said, we are human. You can push us too far, and you press the wrong button, and woo, boy,
right.
You press the wrong button, and you think, well, my goodness, I didn't know they had all that.
Yeah. So, and this is our last two verses.
Yeah, this is the last.
So Matthew 7:13-14 says, enter ye in at the straight gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction, and many there be which go in thereat. Because straight is the gate and narrow is the way which leadeth unto life, and few there be that find it.
I should have given her the Message version for this one. It was really good. But the straight gate, it says, wide is the gate and broad is the way that leadeth to destruction. But Jesus didn't stop there. He made it clear to all of them that were listening. He says, many there be which go in thereat. Many, that word in the Greek, but we use the English word many, but that word was plurality. That word was, the many is really doesn't give a good description. Most, almost all is kind of how it's written, how it's seen, that go in that other way, that go that way of destruction. Many people go and do things simply because it's a trend or simply because other people are doing it. And sometimes they do it because people that they trust or people that they admire or that they adhere to or that they adore or does it. Do you all know what's happening today? What's happening today, it is directly related to this verse, and I mean that honestly. The way that people deal with the social media and the worship of the stars or the worship of the celebrities or these media people, I don't know what they're called, but these media personalities, because some of them are not even stars or celebrities. They just need to get enough people to watch them or to follow them. It's a great illustration for what Jesus is saying here. Many people do things today just because there's a bunch of people.
Mhm.
If you can get 1 million people on YouTube to watch what you're doing, they'll do it. You all have seen all those challenges. I've even been involved in some of them. You've seen all the challenges. The latest one that I've seen was completely ridiculous, but I saw it nonetheless. Social influencers, thank you. I saw it nonetheless. The crate challenge, where you see those people walking up on all those crates and, risking breaking limbs and different things. But because it was some kind of thing, and because it was all over YouTube, and because someone thought about it and it became trendy, a lot of people started doing it. Well, that's how this road to destruction gets visitors. That's how this road works. There's a lot of people, and oftentimes we go with the crowds. We go with where there's a lot of people. There must be something going on because everyone's going there. Well, I can say this, it's not hell and brimstone, but hell is not somewhere we want to go because a lot of people are going. If there's a long line at hell, that's not the line we want to be in. That's not the line. That's not the line at all. And Jesus made it clear that the road to destruction is broad. And there's a lot of people on it. And he told them, you enter in at the straight gate. He's culminating what he's saying to them as far as the Beatitudes. If we were to paraphrase, or we could say that Jesus was telling them, I've told you a lot about personality. I've told you a lot about attitude, told you about how to treat each other, told you about how to handle God's word, how much of a treasure it is, told you how precious you are, told you about how to deal with your brother's issues and by dealing with your own issues, told you about how then to treat everyone and not just your brother, told you that love is the best way, and on and on and on. And Jesus says, and Jesus is saying to them, now what I've told you is a straight gate, and there's few, and it's narrow. I'm sorry, I didn't read verse 14. He said, what I've told you about is a straight gate, and there's a few, and it's narrow. What I've told you, there's not a lot of people that is going to do what I've just told you. There's not a whole, not the totality of people are going to do what I just told you. Even the people that supposedly are going to live righteous and going to live right, many of them are going to be on that broad road, and they're going to be headed that way. And he's telling us, you find the straight way. It's narrow. It leads into life. And there'll be few. There'll be few that find that way. What Jesus was telling them. He told Peter, or Peter told us, that the enemy is so true to what he's doing and so cunning that if he could, he would fool the very elect. He would fool those who have the most information, what it means by the very elect. He's just that cunning and sharp that although we're completely informed and completely educated, he will fool the very elect. And Jesus is saying, take all of this that I've been sharing with you on this message, this sermon, this mount, and you find that narrow way. Try to apply this, what I've given you, because it's going to put you in a narrow way. Everyone that you know aren't going to think the way that you're thinking. Everyone you know isn't going to treat everyone the way you're going to treat them. Everyone that you know isn't going to handle my word the way you're going to handle my word. It's going to be a narrow way. It's going to be a straight gate. You're going to have to be precise to get through it.
So you want me to read those verses?
Yes, the Message version.
So the Message version of Matthew 7:13-14 says this: don't look for shortcuts to God. The market is flooded with surefire, easygoing formulas for a successful life that can be practiced in your spare time. Don't fall for that stuff, even though crowds of people do. The way to life, to God, is vigorous and requires total attention.
Yes. Jesus did not speak of this gate as our destiny, but as the entrance to a path. Once we get this information and create these mindsets and start processing our thinking in this form and in this way, as I just preached this past Sunday, we don't get beside ourselves and think we've arrived. This is just the path. We have to practice this. We have to walk in this. We have to abide in this, as Jesus said, to abide in him in order to get there. This is the start. This is the road. This is the way. This is the road. The broad road is not the way to eternal life. There is a right way and a wrong way. And Jesus appealed to his listeners to decide to go the more difficult way, which leads to life. Sometimes it will be hard to do what's right when when everything else points to what's wrong, and when almost everyone else sees what's wrong right. That's kind of where we are now, how we're living now. Many people see what's wrong right, and they don't really know that it's wrong because they're on that broad road. It's leading to destruction. Everyone's doing it, and they figure, we've been told, I'm sure we've been told by some youth, well, you made your mistakes, so you should let me make mine. You came out okay. And I told them, and I would tell them all, yeah, but I almost didn't make it. And you might not make it. You don't want to go down the road I went. You don't want to make the mistakes I made. They almost destroyed me. They may destroy you. You may not have the fortitude to hang in there and make it. Don't be foolish. Don't do what's wrong. Our parents would tell us years ago, don't get with the wrong crowd. Don't get with the wrong group. It'll just lead you the wrong way. Well, there are so many on that road. Jesus said it. It's not my words. He said, many there be which go in thereat. The other way leads to life. It's a little more difficult. It takes a little more thinking. It takes a little more practicing. It takes a little more processing. It takes a little more discipline. It takes a little bit more reading of the word. It takes a little bit more embracing of the word. The other way is going to take more prayer. It's not going to be the same as the way to destruction. The enemy has set up the way to destruction to look like it's fun and to look like it's easygoing and to look like everybody's doing it, and kind of like Nike, do whatever makes you feel good, or just do it. And there are so many slogans that fit in just go do what everybody does. Just go do you. Go do you. And I think somebody said it in one of those shows, do you, boo. Do you. No, you do Jesus. Okay. And the other show, yeah, go get happy, Linda, go get happy. You do Jesus. You find this narrow way, find this straight gate. That's the one that leads to life. He understands and taught that not all destinations are equally good.
And it was who gonna check me, boo?
Who gonna check me, boo? Is that what it was?
Who gonna check me, boo?
All destinations are equal, are not all destinations are equally good. There was a time a little while, I don't know how y'all feel about Oprah, so I'll give this disclaimer before I say it. There was a time when there was quite a few shows where Oprah had guests on that were teaching that there are many ways to God, that there are many paths to heaven, that there's no one way, that there's no one way of understanding, no one way. And I was in complete horror in hearing that, because I completely disagree with that. I believe the Bible. I believe there's one way and one way only. I believe that there's one straight gate, and I believe there's only one narrow way. And Jesus is making it clear here that all of the other ways that seem right, and in fact, the proverb said that there is a way that seemeth right unto man, but the end thereof is destruction or death. One leads to destruction, the other to life. That's what Jesus said. These are not our words. This is right out of the scripture. The true gate is both narrow and difficult. The true gate, the straight gate. And some versions call it true, some call it straight. It's both narrow and difficult. So it won't always be easy to live upright. Won't always be easy to honor the golden rule. Won't always be easy to be careful with how you've given your pearl out. It won't always be easy to not stand in judgment. It won't always be easy. And sometimes, in fact, it might be downright difficult. Sometimes it may be very, very difficult because we still have a flesh. We still have a spirit of our own. We still have our own intelligence. We still have our own feelings, and we have all of this going in our lives, and we still want certain results. Now, what Jesus does not promise, and I should have put it in the notes, but I'm sorry I did not. He does not promise any results. He doesn't promise results. If you read all of these Beatitudes and all these attitudes, he doesn't promise results. He does promise heaven, but he doesn't promise results. You know, in other words, if I do this and do this and do this, then this is going to happen. He never promised any of that. But he did say, do this, and do this. That's what he said.
But couldn't you look at the promise as heaven?
If that's the way you want to look at it. But we as humans and as flesh and blood, we want
tangible.
Yeah, we want to see something happen in relations to how we're living and what we're doing.
Well, we do. I guess we just take it for granted.
Well, it's difficult today to tell.
Yeah.
I mean, if you do all that you can do, there's one more to read. If you do all that you can do today, all that you can do, and then you still see what's happening, it's easy to start thinking, well, this isn't working.
Yeah.
It isn't working. I've been good. I've been doing Psalm 73. I'm going to preach that pretty soon, next few weeks. Psalm 73. Asaph said he started looking at the prosperity of the wicked, and he said it almost made him slip. He said it almost threw him off course. And he knew he was doing right. He knew he was doing what he was supposed to. He knew he was honoring the commandments. He knew that he was all of that. But he said he just started looking at something else, and it almost threw him off course. And that can happen. And that's why Jesus told us to enter into the straight gate. Get on that path. The straight gate is Christ, of course. And it's his word, and it's what he said. And that way, that road, he says, there will be few that find it. In other words, we're not going to see a whole lot of people all the time on that road. But we're not to be deterred or be dismayed because we don't see anybody. He says there's few that find it. The other way, the last part, if your road has a gate that is easy and well-traveled, you do well to watch out. That's Chuck Smith. That's not mine. I should have put Chuck Smith. That's Chuck Smith. He said, if your road has a gate that is easy and well-traveled, you do well to watch out. Yeah, if everybody's going
easy going
down that road,
it's easy going, huh?
Just make sure that that you went through the straight gate. Make sure.
You gotta watch.
Which I know all of you all do. This is preaching to the choir, but maybe we could share it with some people.
You gotta watch. Ain't that what Pastor Jackson said?
That's correct.
I just wanted us to remember those questions that we had posed in the very beginning. Are those people correct in saying that? Should we ignore sin, false doctrine, erring congregations, etc., because only God can judge? So just making us think. And as we conclude, it is the message of the gospel which we must teach. The results are not up to us. Luke 8:5-15. There is never a scriptural reason to soften the truth. Just like anything else, if you dilute the truth, it is no longer the gospel of Christ. Galatians 1:6-12. If you change the message, the ultimate judge will hold you accountable. Revelations 22:18-19. Only God can condemn. still we have judgments we must render as well.
Amen. Amen.
So the condemning part. So I had to chuckle because Sister Si said that Revelations. So I just, all right.
Well, that concludes
That concludes it.
Matthew 7. I mean, there was more, but that concludes Matthew 7.
Yes.
We will do something else next week if we're able.
Right.
And we will do something else coming soon.
To Zoom near you.
To be announced.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Anybody, anything, any last
Was
comment?
that all right, y'all? Y'all been pretty quiet. Was
Yeah.
that all right?
That was good. I was hoping that we would have got to beware of the false prophet.
Oh,
Come to you in sheep's clothing.
okay.
Especially when you were talking about the gate.
Yes.
How we know we thinking we going the right way. We reading the Bible and everything, but they really taking us like a Jim Jones type thing almost.
Yes. They want us to go the other way.
Right. So reason we got to be watchful.
Man.
I'll tell you, as me and the girls always do it. As Pastor Jackson, one of his last sermons, or so,
He
said you gotta watch.
That's what he said. You gotta watch.
You gotta watch. So, all right. If nothing else,
We love you all.
yes, we do.
Thank you for encouraging us.
We will see you all on Sunday.
Sunday morning.
Yeah, we'll see you all on Sunday.
Thank you.
Excellent.
All right. Love you all.
All right. Love you.
We'll take these up, right?
Mm-hmm.